Morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Lookout. Today is the third day of the big fires in Southern California, and we're going to do a pretty quick one. That's what I always say, and then I talk for an hour. If you're just joining us for the first time, this is the Lookout channel. We're focused on wildland fire, prescribed fire, forestry, land management, and sometimes we talk about water management, water resources. I'm a geographer. My name is Zeke Lunder. I live in Chico, California, and I've been working in mapping around water and wildfire since for the last 30 years, and specifically on wildfire mapping since about 2000. Started a company to do mapping for the fire command teams, and then I've retired from that, but now I do use the tools and tricks that we learned in that industry to do kind of open source public information. So our goal here with the Lookout is to give you kind of a unofficial fire briefing that can be a little more political and a little more straightforward than what you get from the federal and state public information officers, which are basically, those folks are pretty constrained in the language they can use and the way that they have to handle politics, and we're not bound by that. So we're user supported, and that's what we do. So we're going to talk a bit about the Palisades fire and the Eaton fire. Both those fires have really calmed down quite a bit in the last 24 hours. The air is starting to clear a little bit, and we're starting to get kind of a first look with the satellite imagery at the kind of big picture of the damage. The Palisades fire is still active on the north, kind of inland side, though it hasn't been extremely dynamic. So we're going to look a little bit at kind of what the fire did yesterday as far as spreading towards Topanga, and then we're going to look at some kind of preliminary satellite imagery of the destruction in the Eaton fire. So give me 1 second, I got to text my moderator here. Okay, so this is the this is a view that we had of the Eaton fire, or the Palisades fire, and it's pretty similar to the one I showed last night. You can see that the fire started up here around the summit neighborhood, and then ran with the kind of northeast wind along the coast all the way until it hit Malibu and the Franklin fire. Someone wants to hear about the threat to Santa Monica. All right, so I'll take some questions once I kind of do the in brief here. The fire spread all the way to here. It hit the Franklin fire in Malibu that happened in November, and that was that. It didn't have any fuel to burn because this area here is all black. So Malibu's safe from this fire. What I've got here, I think now that the fire's burned all the way to the coast, the question is where does it go now? So what I've got here is a white line that was yesterday's perimeter at 1 p.m. And then the red outline here is where the fire was last night at about 11 p.m. So you can see that yesterday in the 10 hours of burning that we had, because the wind was still offshore, the fire really hasn't pushed very far out to the north. And where you see the white line on the edge of the red, that means that the fire did not spread there at all yesterday, right, during the course of the day. So kind of here around the Topanga Lookout trailhead, off of kind of Saddle Peak, a lot of that is kind of held on the roads, or it hasn't pushed out to the east. So a good portion of the area between Topanga Canyon and the Franklin fire in Malibu is already fairly contained by roads or by kind of barren areas or initial attack, some firefighting maybe. So that's good news in that there's not there wasn't last night a lot of open perimeter kind of between Topanga Canyon Road and Malibu. And if we look at the heat satellites that are kind of a little more current, they also show that same story. Where you see yellow here, it's older than 24 hours since the satellite has detected heat. So that kind of jives with what we see here with the fire kind of not spreading in this area between Topanga Canyon and up here, which I think is Saddle Peak, in that last 24 hours. There is some fire activity during that time here off of Piuma Road above Montanido. So very steep, rugged kind of terrain here on the north side of Saddle Peak, and kind of a continued threat down here to Montanido. Area that's a little more kind of dicey at the moment for Topanga is just this area kind of between Topanga and Pacific Palisades, above kind of Santa Ynez Falls, where there's still active fire out in this basin kind of above the summit. Now yesterday it didn't really move very far. Like we said, the winds were blowing the fire kind of towards the coast. As we've been talking about, there's the threat that once the offshore winds kind of subside, that gravity and onshore will take over. And so looking at kind of the fire activity according to the heat satellites, they're showing the fires kind of spread out a bit farther. Kind of up to about here. So let's just kind of compare that to what we had. So this perimeter out here was 11 p.m. and then the satellite heat detections are like 3 a.m. So it shows some continued spread out towards Topanga Oaks. Those heat satellites aren't the most accurate thing we have, but that is this area kind of between Topanga Canyon Road and over towards the West Ridge trailhead. Like that's the most active part right now of Palisades fire, and there'll be more detailed mapping. The air quality is improving because the fires are kind of dying down, and the winds are also dying down a bit. And through today, I think the winds are supposed to be a little less. But this is still kind of the biggest threat in Southern California right now is, besides new fires starting with New Santa Ana's, what happens out in this rough country here above Topanga is kind of, that's the big frontier in the fire. Now, bridge tops and dozers are how we often fight fires in this country, and there's a lot of dozers already assigned to these fires. I'm sure there's a lot of work going on out here to hold these. The problem is that you've got the fire kind of all across multiple ridges, so you can put a dozer line in here and contain this part of the fire, but then you have more difficult terrain and fire established into multiple drainages. So often we think of like the big box that's going to happen to contain fires like this, and our guess right now at the box, if they can't kind of knock it down with aircraft and get crews in there, would be that they would be probably boxing in this ridge system here. So we'll see where that all goes. Maybe they do something like that. I'm hearing that the audio is kind of spotty. All right, give me a check. Give me a second here. Let me know if that's better. All right. So that's kind of the quick look at Palisades fire. There is some satellite imagery of the fire that is pretty smoky and not real legible, but we do know from miscellaneous reports that there's really heavy destruction in Pacific Palisades. Just you can see that this the white versus red lines here shows that some fire did fill in yesterday between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. Areas that were mapped as not burned here in Ridgeview Country Estates. Some of those burned yesterday. But there are these islands that they're showing as not burned within Pacific Palisades. Along Abramar, El Medio, kind of between Sunset Boulevard and the coast, Alamar Plaza. So that might actually be a kind of surviving island. That's just the area just north of Temescal Canyon Road. We had been worried about the fire running all the way to the coast down Rustic Canyon, and it looks like that didn't happen. It looks like the satellite imagery was kind of that we were looking at there was inaccurate. Those yellow squares, so that's good news. And that the fire has mainly stayed north of, it's all stayed north of San Vicente. The only new spread yesterday during the day was here off of Chautauqua. So as far as threats to Santa Monica, there was no spread towards Santa Monica yesterday from Sullivan Canyon Park up here, Camp Josepho, all the way down to the coast, except here on this part in Chautauqua Boulevard, which got a lot of attention yesterday. So I'd say right now that the threat to Santa Monica is really slight, and I'd be surprised if we see really any new growth in this whole kind of side of the fire. Just seeing as it didn't move at all from here down yesterday, except this little finger that burned down towards the coast and Will Rogers State Beach. All right, turn up the mic. Thanks for your guys' comments on the audio. There is a north arrow up here at the top. It's just kind of hard to see. All right, so that's Palisades Fire. All the way down the coast from Santa Monica all the way to Malibu. It is showing Las Flores here that there's a little section that didn't burn of homes right there around Dukes at Malibu. All right, so we're going to hop over to... So there was a fire here yesterday, right Hollywood Boulevard. I don't think that ended up being. I think they got on it and dealt with it. I haven't heard any good news this morning. Hey Juan, we were watching this on the TV last night during the live stream, and it's a bad spot. Had potential for some real problems. But I think that with the aerial helicopters they're able to fly, the night helicopters, and a lot of resources that they pulled, I think that one's done. Also don't have any information on the other fire up here at Silmar, but I also haven't heard much about that doing anything. As we said, this fire up by Silmar, if you look at the fire history layer, that is completely within a footprint of a 2019 fire, so it's 4 or 5 year old brush, and that was one of the reasons that this didn't really amount to much. Is just that area was really kind of slicked off by a previous fire. All right, so one thing we got last night that's new is we got really detailed mapping of the Eaton fire perimeter. And as we were saying, we don't always know within, the perimeter is basically showing you where the extent of the fire is. It doesn't always tell you what happened inside that perimeter. But we got some imagery this morning that's pretty sobering, and this is a satellite image that was taken kind of yesterday morning, probably at the peak of burning, and you can see that hundreds of homes out here are on fire in this image. This is from Maxar Technologies, and so kind of illustrates our point about that you'll have an area in the perimeter that we don't know often. Like in this image, you can see all these areas are houses burning, and you can see there's like chunks in here where the houses aren't on fire, but it sounds like pretty thorough destruction of large portions of Altadena. So as the air clears, there's a million satellite companies that want to get their product into people's view, and we'll be seeing a lot more. We'll be seeing the carnage in greater detail, which I'm not sure is the how good that is for all of us. But yeah, it's wildness. Right on, Felix. Thanks for your comment. Yeah. So kind of the better news, I mean, this is terrible, of course. The better news here is that the heat satellites aren't showing a lot of growth on out in the wildland here. The fire is slowly making its way up towards Mount Wilson, and it's burning. There's some fresh heat over here in Big Santa Anita Canyon. This is another place where the fire history is affecting kind of the potential of this fire to really, like, it's not going to burn for 100,000 acres, because this fire is bumped into the 4-year-old bobcat fire scar, and we see like no heat out in here on the satellites in the bobcat, just because this is all like young brush with not a lot of fuel. Similarly, on the top end, the fire is bumping into the 2009 station fire, which was huge. Station burned 160,000 acres. And so there's a lot of regrowth in 15 years, but it's not like we saw in Palisades, where the area hasn't burned for 30 or 40 years. So in the big picture, there's potential for Eaton to continue to burn into the station fire scar. But another thing to keep in mind with like these really late season fires is that the days are about as short as they get. We're just a couple weeks past the solstice, and nighttime temperatures drop. Even though the humidities are fairly low with the Santa Anas, they drop. The humidities come up at night still. And so the real active burning period, especially once the wind stops blowing, is really narrow. Fires usually don't burn very intensely early in the morning or late at night, just because it's cooler and more humid. And so without the winds, we don't have critical wildfire conditions, just because of the day length and the lack of wind. So what happens often with these Santa Anas is once the wind stops blowing, the fire behavior moderates a lot. Someone's wondering if the Hollywood signs burn out. I don't know. My SoCal geography is getting better, but I'm a NorCal boy, and I don't really know. Like, if you ask me where anything is in SoCal, I've got to look it up. Anyway, yeah. So that's pretty much what we got for kind of current intel. Is that the fires, yesterday were burning, kind of still burning out islands, house to house, but we didn't have really a lot of major growth in acreage yesterday. Pretty much the big growth happened the night before last. So here's kind of overnight. This view is changes from satellite from infrared to visible at daylight. So you can see that heat in that kind of area headed towards Topanga on the Palisades fire. We see not a lot of heat at all on the Eaton overnight. It started to be a little more heat kind of early morning, like the winds probably increased. And then you see the smoke, and the smoke is kind of dissipating compared to what it was. The red is this question about if Altadena is burned out. The red is what has burned. It's not the active heat. And the active heat here, the orange means it's heat that's older than 12 hours. And the red means it's current. So the best info we have right now from these satellites is that the bulk of the stuff that's still burning on Altadena is up on the mountain, and residual heat of structures burning down. Once the wind stops blowing, it's easier for people to see what's going on. And really the thing that drives this massive structure loss is crazy ember showers. Let me see if I can bring up, I've got some imagery, some video that was shot by my colleague, Michael Steinberg, of just what goes on with these ember showers. Let's see here. Give me a second here to cue something up. All right. So this is from Michael Steinberg, and we showed some of his stuff last night. I think he had some stuff of his ember shower videos. But as long as the wind's blowing hard in these urban interfaces, the embers just these clouds of embers are really what spreads the house-to-house fire. And once that wind stops, here you go. This is kind of his stuff. I would recommend go to NorCal Storm Chasing on Instagram, and you'll see they were out inside the fire during the peak of the house-to-house burning, and it just really tells the story of what it takes. That's why it's so important to have, that little bit of, here's another ember shot. This is what it's like inside these burning cities. And embers get in the vents of your house. They get into the area. They get into your landscaping. But that's why these communities are burning down, is these rolling, just crazy clouds of embers. Right? Like there's just no chance for firefighters to, when all the landscaping is dry, all this shrub, like it's just insane. So now that the winds are slowing down, it's easier for the firefighters to actually go and put out the houses that are on fire and keep them from spreading to other fires. But as long as the conditions are like this, which is the night before last when all this was happening, there's absolutely nothing you can really do to keep homes from burning. Right. So good news is that the winds are slowing down, and a lot of what's already going to burn is burned. but that's what causes this. So no, it's not space lasers. And that's also why people say, oh my God, all the trees are still green, but the home's burned down. It must have been space lasers. The car rims are melted. That's not what's happening, folks. It's just, it's these clouds of embers that are rolling through neighborhoods and catching everything on fire, catching the boxes on your porch. They're catching, so here's the analogy I like to use for talking about home ignitions, right? Is think of your home as being a wooden boat, right? Wooden boats are notoriously, they're expensive to maintain. You got to scrape them all the time. You got to paint them. You got to seal them up. And if you have leaks in your wooden boat, like it sinks, right? If you got little rot or any defect, or you don't scrape it and everything. So think of your house as being a wooden boat. And if it has leaks in it, your home's going to sink. And the leaks are where the embers get in. So if you got little, holes in your vents, if you got little holes in, if the corners of your roof aren't perfectly tight because your eaves are worn or the gutter kind of caused some rot, your home sinks. And you basically have to keep your home super tidy and tight. And you have to maintain, it's good to keep like the first couple feet off of your house. Maintain a gap between your landscaping, your wood mulch, everything, and your home, or else those embers are going to start everything and can burn on fire. And they're going to catch your landscaping on fire, and then the embers are going to get in your house, and your house is going to burn down. It's really, really difficult to maintain a house well enough to keep embers out of it. All right, Moto Warrior lives on a houseboat. Okay, the Sunset Fire. We have a house in Malibu. How do we learn if it's still standing? Man, you guys are keeping my wife hopping. The moderator talking about Ukraine. She's got this list of words that will get you blocked. And every day we're learning more. We're not going to talk about Ukraine on here. We're not going to talk about space lasers. We've already got. It'd be good to put up the list. DEW, direct energy weapons. That'll get you blocked. So don't bother, right? Like, don't waste our time. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about space lasers and any of that. Zelensky's Coke supply. Like, what the heck? I would say the F word right now, but then it'll block me. So yeah, we don't want to hear about Zelensky's Coke habit. We don't want to hear about the lesbian mayor. We don't want to hear about whatever, right? Like, just save it for your Facebook, whatever. This is not Facebook, and just stop, okay? Like, go. Crazy old people, crazy young people, whatever. Yeah. Okay, so that's the story. Someone asked about the Sunset Fire. Get back on the map here. Like we said before, we don't have a lot of good intel on that one, except that the fact that we're not hearing hysterical news reports about it makes us think that it's probably a done deal. This one here, it was a good stop. Everyone, like, people want to bash the firefighters right now, and we've already talked about that. Like, force of nature, people. All right. So we are going to wrap it up here. Get on with our lives. If you already watched the whole thing, I'm not going to say anything new. So good luck to everyone. We're just going to do the quick summary of today's developments and then be done. Okay. Palisades fire started 3 days ago. Started up by Summit neighborhood here, burned down to the coast. Overnight, it burned all the way to Malibu. And then yesterday, the fire mainly was burning within that perimeter, burning homes that were kind of, it was burning home to home and filling in the gaps that had missed on its initial run. It backed out to towards Rustic Canyon. But by about 11 o'clock yesterday, 1 p.m. yesterday, the fire had pretty much pushed as far south as it's gonna, or as far east as it probably will burn. Since then, since yesterday around 1, fire has burned a little bit off Chautauqua Boulevard on the Santa Monica side. It's burned back to the north towards Topanga, but only about half a mile. And then since 11 o'clock last night, the fire's spread another maybe half mile towards Topanga Oaks. The area between Topanga Canyon Road and Malibu on the north side of the fire didn't spread very much. There was some new spread, but the spread was pretty limited to the north of, to the west of Topanga Canyon Road. On the Eaton fire, there hasn't been a lot of new spread, but however, a lot of the neighborhoods kind of continued to burn yesterday through the day. That structure burning activity is kind of diminishing as the winds diminish and as people can kind of make access, and the firefighting has become more effective since the winds have slacked over the last 24 hours. The fire above Hollywood appears to have been contained quickly, which is good news, as it was in a bad location. The fire up by Somar is mainly burning in a 5-year-old burn scar and has not burned significantly. So that wraps it up. We will do a live stream tonight if we have new intel. The fire was not caused by Jewish space lasers, and Ukraine is a different issue. Goats are good. As discussed last night, goat grazing helps reduce fuels, and you can eat goats when you're done with them. So it's a multi-benefit land management hazard mitigation technique. Is it going to get windier? There will be some more wind Friday. So if there's new fires, they have the potential to move explosively. And the way to tell if a fire's headed your way is if it's super smoky where you are and the fire is anywhere within 5 miles. Heads up. Thanks, people. We don't know what the cause is, and we're not going to speculate. Make sure you check out the Lookout webpage. The Lookout webpage is where we put our best intel, and what we like to do is take our most detailed maps and throw them up there with a summary after we're done with all this. So if you go to the Lookout, you'll find our evening update from last night. If you click on that, it'll bring up last night's live stream that has kind of got the active maps. It's our narrative of what we know about how things are going, and then really detailed maps. So if you're trying to find mapping of your particular home, where your neighborhood is, the lookout.org is the best place to look. It has all the information from our live stream. And so we'll be updating posts here. But we'd like people to go to the Lookout because I don't want to post all my maps on Twitter and Facebook and then have those a-holes that own those companies benefit off my work for free. So please continue to support non-Facebook, non-Twitter, non-Instagram sources of media. When you come to my webpage, you see my sponsors. It helps me make money. You subscribe to the PayPal, and then you can send me money that helps me pay my bills, and I'm doing this full-time now. So you can also come and buy some merch. And if you really want to become a student of fire, which we feel like everyone who lives in a fire-prone place needs to become a student of fire, check out, we've got a huge archive on the Lookout of all the stuff we've covered, sorted by category, and we see this as being kind of a public wildfire university. So get informed. Don't tolerate horse shit arguments from people that don't know what the F they're talking about. And bring the facts, people. And buy a hat. Thank you for your support.